Okay. Assalamualaikum and good morning. We will start in 3 minutes time. For those who are in, we would like you to mute yourself so that then we will minimize any noise interferences. I'm sharing at the chat the Facebook link, which is coming from Cool Mom Super Dad page, so that then if any of you is interested to forward or to share into the relevant Facebook page, then you may do so. So 3 more minutes from the hour, and hopefully we will soon start the session. So I'm going to share the screen in terms of so that people know that they are coming into the right session. All right. So got 1 more minute to go.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to those in Malaysia, and a good afternoon to our viewers in Australia, and a very good day to those who are able to join us today. I'm very, very pleased that we are gathered today. Very welcome to all of you. Our topic today is about reading. Today a reader, tomorrow a leader. Now at Cool Mom Super Dad, we focus on raising children as leaders, and we believe that reading is one of the most important ways to develop the human intellect. And as much as possible, we want reading to become something that is pleasurable, something that's exciting to children, so they continue the learning journey as they grow up. So today we have got 2 very, very, I would say important. To me, they are very important people as panelists because they are literacy advocates. One all the way from Australia, Miss Jackie French. And we have our very own Malaysian local guru, reading guru, Nik Eliani. Now, a little bit about Miss Jackie French, and of course, Jackie can tell more about herself afterwards. She describes herself as an Australian author, and by the way, Jackie has written almost 300 books, believe it or not. She's a historian, ecologist, and honorary wombat as well. Jackie was also the 2014-2015 Australian Children's Laureate. And Jackie wrote this book, I Spy a Great Reader, How to Unlock the Literacy Secret and Get Your Child Hooked on Books. And this was my first introduction to Jackie. Now, Jackie, allow me to quote the very first 2 lines of this book. Every child, I wrote it down here, every child can learn to read. Every child must learn to read. I remember the very first moment I read these lines, and I felt that it was written with such conviction. It must have come deep from the heart. And I myself personally have known children who struggled to read, and it wasn't really something that I would want to remember. It's so painful. And the more I read about Jackie, I told myself that one day I've got to speak to Jackie herself. So today, that dream has come true. Thank you very much, Jackie, for being with us today. And my first question to you, my first question to you is, what has your experience been as a child who struggled with reading and spelling in terms of reading?
I was very lucky. I was brought up for my first 4 years by my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother was not a teacher because women back then, married women, were not allowed to be teachers. But she was married to a headmaster, and the headmaster's wife was supposed to teach the little children how to read and write. So by the time I was 3, I had the undivided attention of a woman who had taught little children for 40 years and had her first grandchild and was going to make sure I could read. But writing legibly is still difficult. I have a form of dyslexia called dyspraxia. The instruction in my brain does not go to my hand. My writing is illegible even to me. My numbers go back the front and my spelling is terrible. But luckily, computers these days can write legibly. I love calligraphy. That makes an art of writing. I would love to see the 2 things taught separately. Computers for legibility, calligraphy as the art. But I was very lucky, again, with most of my teachers. Because I could read, because I could tell stories, I was never regarded as stupid. And slowly, when I became an author, when I would tell children, oh, but I can't write legibly, I am dyslexic, I would see children in the audience, often the disruptive, angry children, suddenly pay attention and look with enormous intensity and hope that someone who had problems with reading and writing could not just learn to read, but become a writer too. When I first became interested in this, we knew very little about the science of reading. But these days, it is so wonderful that there has been research into the methods that teach children how to read the best methods, so that every child, even if they have problems, can be taught to read. A book can change a child's life. A book can change the world. And these days, every child can have access to that extraordinary world within books.
Well, that's very insightful indeed of how you get yourself connected with books, the world of books, and making children felt that this is a source of their own discovery of themselves and discovery about the world through books then. So
Yes, I had in many ways, after I left my great-grandmother, a very hard childhood, but I always had books. With a book, a child can go anywhere. With a book, a child can have friends 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. With a book, children see how others live. We all have only one life, but within books, we can live 1,000 lives or 10,000 lives, understand ourselves, other cultures, other people, and also how the world should be in 10 years or 20 years when they are adults. The books that children read create the worlds that we will have in 10 years, 20 years, in 30 years, when they are the grown-ups and we are very, very old or gone.
okay, thank you for sharing that. Then I would like to move on to Nik Eliani now. Nik, thank you for coming. As the author of Readeasy, Phonics, and the Malay version Bacalah, Anakku. So what makes you interested into this book reading for children? I mean, Jackie has her own personal reason, struggle with the dyslexic. So what about you? What's your case for action?
Well, my love for teaching reading actually started when I first got married and I was pregnant with my firstborn. And that was when I was 20 years old in Canada. So I was studying there and I got married. And when I was there, I saw everybody was like reading books everywhere, and we were like Malaysians and we were like not doing that. So I always felt that if I have kids on my own, then I'm going to make sure that they are able to read. So that's where it all began. But teaching and sharing my experience how to teach reading to small kids really started when I myself, as a mother, had a problem with my number 3. Athira, she was 6 years old. She was going to a kindergarten and she was singing the alphabet song ABCD, but I found out that she cannot even read simple words and she didn't even like recognize which is A, which is B, even though she can sing the whole song very well. Because you see, so from that, my husband and I, we sat down and we went to bookshops to look for books. I grew up with Peter and Jane, the Ladybird series. So I was looking for a book to teach her to read in Bahasa Melayu, in the Malay language, because at that time we were living in Kota Baru, and a lot of people there do not speak English much. So it was easier to teach her our mother tongue, which is Bahasa Melayu, Malay language. But we couldn't find books, so we sat down, and to cut the story short, we were actually English teachers, and we have knowledge on the English phonics. So we used what we know to started writing a book, a series of books to teach Athira to read at 6. And amazingly, in about 1 month, she could read simple words. So that's how it all began. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I discovered about raising children as well, Nik Eliani. I realized that challenges and problems in raising children are actually gifts for us to help others, not just ourselves. And I find that this is exactly what we did. So that's really interesting. Could you tell us what makes the phonics approach different?
Yeah, it's different. It's because I call it brain friendly. As Jackie mentioned, now we have scientific research on how the brain reads. So it was in 1998 that I came across a newspaper article. I still have this, okay, to show. In the Star, in our Star newspaper, and it talks about the research that Dr. Shewis did in the Yale Center of Dyslexia and Creativity. And they were looking into the brain using functional MRI to see how the brain reads. And we now we know that the brain reads by breaking words into sounds. You see, so it's sounds, not letter names ABC. So from there onwards, I was really into phonics, and what I did with Athira when she couldn't read was we taught her to read using phonics, and that's why it's different, because when it's brain friendly, of course it's going to be child friendly, and when you use a method to teach reading that's proven by science, it's easier for us to teach, whether we are a parent or teachers, and it's easier for the children to learn. So that is why phonics is different from other the regular method that we've been using to teach reading, whether it's for Bahasa Melayu, the Malay language, or for English.
I feel like the research is, it sounds like music to my ears and to others as well, because it's not just something like, fake belief. We know that there is great potential for kids to love reading all throughout their lives. And if a child is having great difficulty to read, it's not because he or she is foolish or stupid or slow. It's likely us. So we need to point at ourselves and to ask ourselves, what is it with the way that we are teaching children that might not be effective?
So Jackie, you could see that some kids fall behind in terms of their reading, and in the book, I just wanted to show to the audience, this was done in 2014, when I think Jackie has not only lost count the number of books that she has done, and you could see that, when you wrote it, all too often problem is pick up but shrug off, kids learn at different rates, and parents would be telling that they will soon catch up, but many really fail to do so. So I think this is where the first point of call. What is it that the parents can do, and when should they be worried? At what age? I mean, Nik mentioned it was at the age of 6 years old, and she was already worried. Should get worried earlier than that, or so? Give us a rule of thumb, when we start to see the warning sign.
If the child is worried, then you should be worried. If your child's friends are performing much better than your child, children often choose their friends with much the same ability. So a very bright child who has got a reading difficulty may have very bright friends who are zooming ahead. So if your child's friends can read much better. But also, I think parents often instinctively understand when their children may have a problem. And so if a parent is worried, take your worries seriously. The longer a problem is left, the less confidence a child will have. They will see others learning to read. It is so easy to teach a child that they are stupid. And once they believe that, it is very hard to change their minds. So the earlier a problem is identified, the earlier a child gets coaching, the earlier a child is exposed to good teaching techniques. In Australia, we are still having the phonics battle, and not all children have access to the best ways of learning to read. And I think the rule of thumb often used is, out of every 5 children, 3 will probably just learn to read. 1 will need extra help, and 1 will need a lot of help, where you really need to watch and catch that problem very, very early. When a child reads, they are absorbing language. It literally does create new neurons and new connections between the neurons. It is like bodybuilding for the brain, except the head does not get bigger like muscles get bigger, but the brain, you could say, gets denser. And that happens the most when a child is growing. it is so important that children read early and read widely.
Thank you for that, Jackie. I think that's really true, because when we talk about reading, it's not just about reading, or for that matter, writing, because a child compares himself or herself all the time with the rest of his or her friends. And if that child feels that he cannot keep up, definitely there will be a dent in their confidence. Yeah. So coming to that, on the same note, Nik Eliani, could you please share with us perhaps some issues that you have observed? Because I know that you have years of experience, a wealth of experience teaching children, and I'm sure there have been issues. And if you could share with us what these issues are and how the phonics method have helped overcome these issues.
Yeah, thank you, Jamilah. Yeah, it's so true that I've been teaching children to read for over 30 years, and I'm really passionate about it. And the problem that I see, of course, there's many reasons why children struggle to read or why they fail to read. It could be because they have problem in language development. It could be because they have very limited experience in, they are limited experience with books and print. It could all be because they have genetic problem, probably parents, one of the parents is dyslexic, it could be the reason. But for the children who came to us, who seek help because they cannot read, most of them are actually struggling to read because they are not taught to read. Actually, I know some people are going to be angry with me because a lot of teachers are going to be angry with me because I'm saying that they are not teaching the child to read. What I mean is because the way that we are teaching is not right. So it's not the children's fault actually that they struggle to read. It's because of we adults, teachers and parents, because we don't know actually what is reading actually and how to teach the way that all children, most children will be able to read, even though those with reading disability. Okay, so it's because of that, it's because of the method.
Yes.
And here in Malaysia, not many people are talking about the science of reading, and that I want to share with Jackie. I think people don't understand why. Like I'm always every day sharing with people that come on, use phonics because that's the brain-friendly method. It will help especially kids with reading disabilities, especially the dyslexic kids. There's no other way. Research has proven. Scientific research has proven that phonics will help dyslexic to read because in their brain there's phonological deficit. So if you teach them the letter names, reading in Bahasa Melayu, for example, to spell the word nasi, N-A-Na, S-I-C, or for English, C-A-T, cat, they will go haywire. The best way is to teach them the sound to symbol or sound to spelling mapping. So yeah, that is actually the main problem of struggling readers is because of the method of teaching. And if we know what reading is, I think that we should talk about that. What is reading actually? And I want to share with everybody, because I too thought that reading was something natural. I thought that maybe if I read books every day to my children, and if I teach them the letter names, the alphabet, that one day they can read. But now we know through research that's not true.
Okay, untuk tahun 4 ni, kalau untuk ke-8 subjek tu memang tak ada lah. Cuma saya ada highlight beberapa mana yang dapat A dan A-.
Okay, so there's some interruption there. All right, so yeah. So we have to know that reading is not natural, that reading through the science of reading, we know that is cultural invention. Reading has to be taught. Okay, and now we know that actually we have to build the reading brain. The brain has to be wired for reading. And that is what I want parents and teachers know. So when they see their child struggle, actually it's quite normal for the child to struggle because reading is not natural. It's not, we are not born to read. But if you know the way, and then you teach them the right way, then a lot of kids, I would say all kids would benefit from that correct teaching method. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nik Eliani. Do you happen to have something that you can show us how it works, how it is done? Because I'm not familiar with the phonics method.
Okay, all right. So in phonics, we teach them the smallest speech sounds. So according to the science of reading, children should be taught the sounds in the language they are learning to read and write. So, and it's easier for us to teach them to read in their mother tongue first. So teach those sounds first, you know. So we do not teach ABC like for Bahasa Melayu, we would teach this as A, you know, in English it would be A for apple. And we do not teach this as S, we will teach them as S. So we will, of course, teach them sounds first through songs, because we are teaching small kids. So we want it to be play, to be fun, no stress, please, okay? No stressing kids when it comes to teaching reading. So we have to know the way that appeals to children, okay? And from that, we will teach them to map the sounds to symbols. So the sounds to this letter, and I usually say with parents and adults, I'm going to use the letter names, but when we teach children, we do not even teach them the letter names. It's just mapping sounds to symbols. So this is S, okay, and this is for Bahasa Melayu is E, and in English is the short sound first. So that's what we do. And when it comes to reading, okay, for Bahasa Melayu, let's say for the word, this word, okay, so we teach them to blend the N and the A becomes Na, and that's nas, and this E, nasi. So they blend sounds, all the sounds in the word to make a word, and it's meaningful. They really get it. But if you say letter names, N-A, like what we do usually in school, N-A, na, S-I-C, is just teaching them to read through memorization. And it doesn't make sense to kids, you know, and when it doesn't make sense, kid will find reading boring and not fun. And it's the same thing for English. If I've got a simple word like this, so before in school, we used to be taught to spell the word and to memorize the pronunciation, C-A-T, cat. That's what we do to learn to read in English. Jackie, that's what we do in Malaysia, okay? But now with phonics, and I want to stress, it's not any phonics. It has to be synthetic phonics or structured phonics, where we teach them the smallest speech sounds in the language, and we teach them to blend the sounds. So we teach k, a, ta, and we teach them to blend cats. That's how we teach them to read using phonics, by blending small sounds into words.
Yeah. Nik, thanks for enlightening us that there is one thing certain, is that one size doesn't fit all. And the way the school or the education system is that they taught everybody the same way, not realizing that everybody has his own unique strengths or challenges for that matter. So I wanted to go and see to Jackie with regards to her dyslexic experience, because let's all accept the fact that a blind person reads through the fingers by touching the braille. So the person is still reading. Yeah. Yes. People, when we say like us, we read by using our eyes and then work from our way left to right and connecting it. Obviously, dyslexic has its own way of how they need to understand the way they learn, unlike the blind or unlike people who use the eyes. Now, that's why I wanted to know we would like to know, Jackie, what's your biggest lesson that you would like to share with us, either for those who are still struggling or children who are still grappling. And I know some, unfortunately, teachers are telling them that you are stupid. All those kind of remarks and unwarranted, unnecessary, have just done nothing but dampen and destroy their motivation. Then what can we do then, Jackie? How do you share with us?
The same methods work with children who are dyslexic or who are blind. My best friend reads a book a day and she is blind. and she reads using Braille. But again, she also breaks her words down, a new word down, into the sounds. Perhaps 20 years ago, I became patron of an organization for school children in an impoverished area to the south of us who had reading problems. And we thought that they would all be dyslexic or dyslexic. Most had simply months. Perhaps their parents had been traveling and they had gone to different schools. Or sometimes, yes, the teaching was not very good. But to our enormous surprise, we found the same methods worked for every child, but not necessarily at the same rate. Yeah. Some children had not picked up a certain sound. Some children find it harder to perceive sounds or even need to be taught to perceive those sounds. And so they do need extra coaching and extra tuition. We found that particularly where they had extra help every day, building on what they had learned before was the most effective. But the most moving thing was that every child in that program learned to read not just to the basic standard, but above it. My favorite was a 14-year-old boy who was essentially homeless. He suffered from fetal alcohol syndrome. So he was a very slow learner. He was very violent as well. And 14, most teachers would say he could not learn to read at 14, impossible, impossible. But luckily he had one of the best tutors and he was learning to read when he lost his temper and he stabbed the headmaster. This was hard, but the headmaster is a very compassionate man. He did not expel him, even though he had to go to hospital. And the boy kept learning. And at the end of the year, he could read above the average standard. His ambition as a homeless child was to manage a supermarket because of all the food. And now he does manage a supermarket. His tutor has become an adopted aunt, and every Saturday he goes there to take the book he has read and get another book and eat orange cake and have a cup of tea and talk about the book he has read. He has joined a men's group building boats for underprivileged children. He is married. He is very happy. But to see a child like that, a young man whose life seemed hopeless and impossible, turned around by the power of reading. If it can happen for him, it can happen for any child. If they are taught a way that they can understand and they see results. I think so many people had tried to see him and with no results. He just lost more confidence. The more confidence he lost, the more violent he became, the angrier he became. Once he had confidence and saw what he was achieving, the violence vanished and he turned to helping others.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's really inspiring. And that was just one child, right? And it's true that sometimes we might make the error of judging children, of them being naughty and undisciplined and whatnot, but it could be something else. It could be their frustration at not being able to do something that is supposedly as simple as reading. Supposedly simple, but as Nik Eliani has mentioned just now, it's not that simple actually. It might look simple to us as adults, probably because we have forgotten how challenging it could have been when we were growing up. So thank you again for sharing with us that story. And moving on to Nik Eliani, we all know that in Malaysia, there is so much emphasis on academics, and parents and teachers really get worried when kids can't read. And so much so that, well, from my observation, I feel that this takes away the joy of reading, because parents, in communicating with their children, they tend to emphasize the grades. If you don't know how to read this, you're going to be last in class, you're not going to shine, and this and that. So at the end of the day, what happens is that children can read, but they don't see it as something that contributes towards their growth in the long term. They don't really see it as something that is pleasurable, but something like a burden, something that they don't really look forward to. So might you be able to comment on this, Nik Eliani, about this overemphasis on reading and more reading, just so that we get excellent grades?
Thank you, Jamilah. I think it's good that parents want their kids to read, but once again, we have to look at how they make their kids read. And also, what I see is that I understand that parents want their child to read because they want their child to be successful in school. You know, everybody wants their child to be that. But again, in Malaysia, I see that when the children enters kindergarten, parents and teachers alike expect the children to become good readers at that level. You know, I always feel that reading should start, can be taught beginning kindergarten a little bit more formally, but through fun and play. But the skill of learning to read, what more to spell and writing has to go on forever, I think, forever. And that's why it's important for us to pick the method that the reading method that a child can use for a lifetime. You know, probably at kindergarten, your child can read simple words and you're happy. Oh, good, great. You know, my child can read. But if the method that you are using is just memorizing words, just memorizing the spelling, by the end of year 2, 8 years old, you will see that, why is that child reading so slow, and they are not interested to read anymore. They find it boring. And once again, it's because the way we teach, especially for Malay language, because to read a long word like bangunan, they have to spell ba, ngu, ngu, na, nan. I'm even not good at doing that. And then they say bangunan. It's such a chore to do that. But if you teach them phonics, they can just like blend sounds, ba, and the ng there, and with my ng. Yeah. So if you don't teach phonics, what happened is that we teach ng as 2 separate letters ng, whereas it should represent the sound So with phonics, they can just blend sounds ng, and the n is nan. So they can just like read multi-syllable words at one shot. If they are taught that way, then they will find, oh, it's so easy to read. And I can immediately understand when I blend the sounds together, I get a word I can understand. Wow, reading is not tough, and when they enjoy, they will read more and more. You see, and that's what parents want. They want their children to read. So in a way, I think parents and teachers alike should be given the knowledge of what is actually reading and how to go about teaching reading so that children can make sense of prints, of what is written, so that they can enjoy reading. And but first they will learn to read fluently. Once they read fluently, they can understand the text that they read, and once they understand, they will enjoy reading. So there won't be any problem of pressuring kids to read, but the kids don't enjoy reading. So it goes back again to the method of reading. Yeah. So that's something that I think we have to look deeply, so that we have kids who function when they read. So we're looking at the functional literacy, not just the literacy rate. We can say, all the kids in Malaysia, 90% of kids can read, but they are not reading. Why? Let's look at why are they not reading, why they don't like to read books. Let's look at the method. If by 8 years old, they are still crawling, reading, like crawling, they will not enjoy reading. So this is things that I think we parents and everybody has to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly then, Nik, I suppose the joy of reading is to allow children to discover, and by equipping them with the right tools, these are the enablers for them to feel that they have grown and progressed then. Now, I'd like to switch gear now to Jackie, in the sense that obviously the first point of concern comes from a mother who saw the kid cannot read. Now, I'm sure that that's one of the primary factors, but there could be other critical success factor that will sort of support the child. So in your experience and your exposure, so what kind of the other components, other parameters that would enhance as well as accelerate to become the catalyst? I'm sure the mother is the primary source of motivator or demotivator if she didn't use the right technique. But what says you in this situation then?
I think reading is like riding a bicycle. A child needs to be taught to ride a bicycle, but they also need a bicycle. If a child does not have the books they enjoy, they will not become a passionate reader. My grandson asked me yesterday, Grandma, why don't people write more books about venomous spiders? And I explained that because most people aren't interested in venomous spiders. And he said, I am, and my friends are. We need to, first of all, studies have shown that if a house has got 70 books in it, it doesn't matter what kind of books, then that house has got a culture of reading. They can be very old books, they can be new books, they can be books from a library, but they need to be books there. Both the mother and the father need to be role models, so the child sees the parent reading books and enjoying books. But we also need to teach children that most books are boring. The last time I went to a bookshop before lockdown, there were only 2 books I wanted. Now, admittedly, I'd read some of the others, but I read a book a day, but most books are boring. I do not enjoy books about cricketers. I do not enjoy books about politicians unless the politicians have been dead for at least 20 years. I don't enjoy books about zombies. I don't enjoy books where the hero captures the villain but kills 10,000 people doing it. Most of the books in that bookshop I did not want to read. And my grandson too would not have wanted to read them yesterday unless they were about venomous spiders or possibly venomous jellyfish. We need to give children permission to say, this is the kind of book that I like, to taste a book. I don't mean doing this. Children laugh if you show them that. Taste a book by looking at the cover. You can often tell a book by its cover. To read the blurb, to leaf through it and see if it's the kind of book they feel like reading. But also to teach them that reading is like food. Sometimes you will feel like fruit, sometimes you will feel like a solid mood, a solid meal. Sometimes you will want a light, funny book that will make you relax, you can escape into. At other times, that book will be boring, and you want a book that makes you think and feel and see the world in a different way. As parents, we want to share the books we loved as a child with our children. And my son, my nieces, my nephews, none of them like any of the books that I loved as a child. They like totally different books. And that is where a teacher librarian, someone who understands what books are available and also what your child likes. Give children permission to say, this book is boring, and take another one. Or even say, read half a book and say, that was wonderful, but I've had enough. And close the book and get another one. And the and get another one is the most important. Also too, we often lose readers round about 6 or 7 when we stop reading to our children. Children at 6 and 7 can read simple books, but often if they watch television, they are watching very complex programs. We need to keep reading to our children the books they don't have the confidence to read. Read and stop at an exciting point, and then they will pick it up and realize they can read it and keep on going. My father still read to me by phone when he was 84. At 4:30, there was a phone call. Oh, Jack, have you read Thomas Keneally's latest? And he would start to read a chapter. Keep reading to your children till they tell you to stop. And beware, because like me and my father, we may never say stop reading. I always loved my father reading to me.
I suppose once a child to a father, always a child to your father, right? It's really,
I think so, yes.
I think it's, for me, it's so heartwarming to hear about your personal stories. And I understand, Jackie, that you have written a book about the pandemic for kids. Could you tell us more about it?
Yes, it is called Pandemic. But I wrote it for this pandemic, about a pandemic 100 years ago, the influenza pandemic around the world. There were no vaccines, there were no antibiotics, but within a few years, just with kindness and quarantine, the pandemic ended. Until now, that virus only exists in a few test tubes that have been locked away. As a mother, as a grandmother, I would like to promise children, yes, you will have a perfect world when you grow up. And I can't, they won't. But we can teach children, particularly with books set in the past, where a pandemic may not be as confronting. We can teach them that, yes, there are hard times, but we are all descended from the people who survived pandemics, tsunamis, volcanoes, wars. If our ancestors had not survived, we would not be here. We are all descended from warriors, or people who are good at running very fast and hiding, or people who are good at saying, we cannot speak each other's language, but if we both cooperate, we might escape from the volcano exploding over there. We are descended from survivors. And we can teach children, do not be scared of the challenges. Human beings are very good at surviving and overcoming challenges. The one thing we are not good at is being bored. When humans are bored, we do silly things. We need to give children the confidence, and we can through books, to say, look, if we work together, we can overcome challenges. And when you work together with challenges, I can promise one thing. In the future, you will never, ever, ever be bored.
Yep. Yeah, I'm bored. That's the, that's a simple language from the children, or are we there yet, So I wanted to sort of latch on to Nik, the same sort of what Jackie has mentioned. She spoke about the house would have need 70 books. So that sounds like a mini library, a corner to support the child's reading culture and habit. She mentioned about the role of fathers I think it's a subject that close to my heart. And there is also the study done by UK and Australia to confirm that if father does the book reading bedtime, then the vocabulary of the children will increase. So this has been done and proven again and again. So from your perspective then, Nik, what other things, what are the other things that parent can do to either inculcate and encourage these reading habits amongst the children, assuming that they have already overcome that challenge of reading? And once we have done with that, then we will start going to see some questions from the participant in the chat box, so that then we will give opportunity for others. So what's your thoughts on that then, Nik?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jackie. I mean, reading to your children and with your children, there's two different ways of reading, but it should go on after the child can read. It doesn't stop at 6 or 7 or 8 years old. It should go on, because you know why? Because kids need to read bigger words, bigger books, and phonics alone cannot cater to that. You know, it has to be, the kids have to know how to decode, to read by decoding the words, and they also need to have a good language comprehension, you see. So excuse me, so parents have to help them acquire bigger vocabulary through books that is a bit higher to their reading level. And that can be done through read alouds, reading together, you know, reading, taking turns to read sentence by sentence, or we can do a chorus reading together, parents and children, to encourage them to read not just simple books. And this is very important for future, for academic, for more learning, because we know that from school, starting primary school, then children need to increase their vocabulary, and the increase in vocabulary in school is through reading more and more. So I would suggest parents do not stop to make time to read to your child and to read with your child. Okay, and if your child is not starting to learn to read formally yet, that too parents have to do from birth. Start reading to and with your child from the first day the child is born, because we know now through science that we have to build the spoken language area in the brain. You know, children's language has to be good for them to read, to learn to read easily. So we can do that by interacting with children a lot more, singing, telling stories. And now we have the problem of children not wanting to listen to your stories or to you reading books, because you are giving them gadgets. So that's another problem that I want parents to think, please make time for books in your family routine, not gadgets. So that will help prepare your kids to be ready to learn reading a little bit more formally when they enter kindergarten. But keep on reading so that they will increase their vocabulary and they will become expert readers. I'm now telling parents and teachers, we just don't want just any reader. We want kids to read fluently, effortlessly, so that they enjoy reading and they understand what they are reading. So another thing that we can do, that parents can do, I would like to add on before the child is taught to read, is to expose or introduce a little bit of phonics to their children through play. Nothing stressful. It's just like singing phonics song, like bo be bear ba ba ba, and doing action. Or when they are playing with their toys, you can just book ba book. Book, just like that, you know, just introducing, you know, as they play, make it meaningful, no drills, no force, and that will help them to learn phonics when they enter kindergarten, because if the teachers are using the correct phonics, we are trying to wire the brain for reading. Once the brain is wired, then that's it, boom. They will be able to make sense of print, and they will love to read And now what parents can do, as I've said before, is to continue reading to and with your children. And yeah, for like in Malaysia, we want our kids to read not only in the Malay language, we want our kids to read in the English language. So make sure you prepare your kids by using English at home, from birth, so that, you build the spoken language for English. And when it's time for the child to learn to read in English, it's not foreign anymore. So that's my advice.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nik. Well, we ourselves believe that there is no such thing as not having time to read to your child, because if you make that a priority, actually, there will always be time. And I myself, I breastfed my kids, and even when they were babies, I've already started reading to them, so much so that sometimes, after a certain age, when they start walking, they thought that it's part of the ritual. They would just pick up a book, and I know when they pick up a book that they actually wanted to be fed, right? So coming back to the question that Nik mentioned just now about introducing language, is there, and this question, perhaps Jackie could share with us some thoughts. We know that we live in a multicultural, multiple languages, and it would really help us so much to understand one another if we could understand each other's language. In Malaysia, we have Malays, Chinese, Indians, and many more ethnicities. So, we all speak different languages, although the national language is Malay. And of course, a lot of Muslims here, they want their kids to understand Arabic as well, because that's the language of our holy scriptures, the Quran. So what do you think, Jackie, if a parent wants a child to learn at least 3 languages, Malay, Arabic, English, this is a question that came from Dr. Eliani Muhammad. What are your thoughts? What is the approach that is suitable so children do not feel overwhelmed? Should we just introduce them all 3 languages at the same time, or should we go bit by bit, 1 language at a time? Over to you, Jackie.
There is a lot of evidence that children who are taught more than 1 language when they're under 5, when they're very young, or even from the beginning, the language center in their brain is larger. They are more intelligent. They're better with words. It may sound counterintuitive that learn 1 language and you'll be better at language, but it doesn't work like that. Learn 2 languages, learn 3 languages, learn 4 languages. Sadly, in Australia, we are very, very bad with that. Even where Australians, their parents or their grandparents may have come and speak another language in the house. Often the children only speak English. I support the schools in Australia that start teaching a 2nd language and sometimes even a 3rd language in the first years of school. It seems that children almost instinctively know when to speak to which person and in which context, in which language. In some Indigenous communities in Australia, where they marry into different language groups, a child may be learning 8 languages because their family, different members of the family may speak 1 of 8 different languages. And yet the child knows which language to speak with which person. So I think my only advice is do not hesitate. Make your child multilingual from day 1. But I would also add, turn off the TV screen. To hear sounds, and different languages use different sounds. To hear sounds clearly, it's very distracting, particularly when we haven't acquired language, to hear voices in the background. So turn off the radio, the computer, the TV screen, so a very young child can learn to distinguish the sounds. to check a child's hearing because they can't hear k, a, t, if they only hear. One teacher, tutor in Australia had a very good reputation teaching reading, extremely good. And we didn't know what a secret was. She wasn't a teacher. She had no training. And then I met her. She was teaching children in an area where many of the children had middle ear problems and were partially deaf. And she was English and spoke in a very upper class English voice with a diction you could hear at the end of the room. And every child could hear every sound that she made. And that simply was her secret. Every child could hear the sounds of language. So please make your children multilingual, but not multi-sound. Turn off the screens while they are acquiring language for at least part of the day, and speak very clearly.
Thank you, Jackie, for being the advocating this and enlightening parents, because I believe that children, their brain are just like sponge, and they can absorb relatively something that we ourselves may not be as agile as it is. So I was just now I do recall there was a case of a boy whose butler is from Czechoslovakia, and the gardener is from Italy, and the maid is from another country, and the parents are mixed. So all in all, this boy managed to speak 8 languages with all the different peoples in the house, simply by just getting connected, exposed, and continuously engaged. And I think this is very encouraging if we can encourage children to be able to be comfortable speaking the many languages then. So when I was reading at Dushantini input on her sharing for her 3-year-old kid, whereby the husband and the 3 of them read books and that sort of things. So it gives a lot of joy of how family can stay together by reading together. But what I'm curious now is any of the panelists would enlighten us whether there is any difference between boys' interest and girls' interest towards reading. Can you just enlighten us before? Nik, go ahead.
You know, before I answer your question, Fakhri, I just want to add on about the question that you asked Jackie about teaching children more than one language. Yeah. And I was saying that we were not born to read, that reading is not natural, but every child is born to be able to listen to sounds of all languages in the world. So when they are born, you know, it's the a gift from our Creator that babies can learn and can hear the sounds of all languages in the world. But the environment will, you know, will help them to make sure whether they can speak and then later on read and write in that language. And I want to add on that there's a research by Dr. Patricia Kuhl, and she was using the functional MRI to see what's happening in actually baby's brain about acquiring the second language. And she found out that if you want your child to learn another language, it's good to teach them, not really teach, I mean to expose them, to talk to them in that language, you know, meaningfully in the first year, or I would say the first 10 to 11 months. That is what what she came up in her research. And that is so profound, I think, for us to know as parents. If you want your child to be able to read another language, make sure you use the language at home from day one and throughout the first year. And through that research, she said that those sounds, those small sounds, those phonemes that we're going to teach them to read through the phonics method will be stored in the brain for later use. But if you wait a little bit later, then it's going to be a bit more challenging for kids. So if you want your kids to learn the second language, to read and to write and to speak in another language, do it in the first year. Do it in the first year. That is something that I want to share with everybody. And what was the question again, Fakhri? I'm getting old. I've forgotten your question.
The question is between boys and girls. Is there any difference, you know?
Yeah, interest of reading, of course. They like, as Jackie said, your grandson, he loves to read about spiders and things like that. And I also have experience with my sons. And it was challenging to teach them to read, actually. But after they've acquired the skill of reading, it was difficult for me to get books that interest them to read so that they can practice reading, they can practice the skill that they have learned to read to become more fluent readers. Yes, at that, it's better. But when I had my first son in early 2000, it was difficult in Malaysia to get books, especially in the Malay language, that interest boys of that age. Yes, of course they have different interests to read books that they like. Yeah.
I suppose, yeah, thanks for that, Nik. I suppose it's not that they lack interest in reading. It's just lack of resources. It's more a lack of resources, lack of books that can really grow their interest in reading, right?
That too, yeah, that too, yes. If we have more books that interest the boys, I think boys will read a lot more than girls. But yeah, but now I think we have a lot more books, I think. And Jackie, do write more books for boys.
Yeah, I knew this because when my children, at least 6 of them, we went for a book shopping spree. So I'll give them about 50 ringgit worth of books and empower them to go into the bookshop and purchase whatever books that you would like. And if it's not enough, you can negotiate with other siblings so that you combine your resources and be very assertive who gets what kind of book. And I know one of the youngest would love with origami. So that's one way, instead of just going for shopping for the sake of shopping, then book shopping spree is something worth to consider then. Okay, over to you.
Okay, there is a question from Puan Nazira Banu here. What about kids who love more on audiobooks?
Anyone can comment about audiobooks.
Audiobooks. Any of the panelists, either Nik or Jackie, if you're able to comment.
Audiobooks are a very good way to introduce children to a different book. They are a very good way to expand their interest into different kinds of books, but listening to a book does not have the same effect either on learning or on the brain as reading. The very act of reading, the very act of writing literally affects the brain and the brain development. So audiobooks are wonderful, but they are not a substitute. They are an addition, not a substitute.
I agree with Jackie. Yeah, it's not a substitute. And because we know that if they read real books, they'll be touching the book, they'll be flipping pages, and they can even smell the book, and that will help them in enjoying reading books more and more. But audiobook is good for to help them to listen to correct pronunciation, especially if the child is learning to read in another language that is not in their mother tongue, and also for fluency. So if you've got a reader or a book, you even parents can record themselves reading the book and get the kids to listen to help them become fluent readers. Yeah.
Well, I sincerely think that in the spirit of our topic today, today readers and tomorrow leaders. So the research have found out that CEOs around the world read about 4 to 5 books a day. Okay, well, that will entail some speed reading. Of course, some will entail audiobooks while driving in the car or being driven to their respective or waiting at the lounge for that matter. But having said that, my personal experience, the whole entire book by Frederick Forsyth, which is the book, the famous book about the assassination attempt for the French. I listened to the audiobook in the car from my home to the office and enjoy the traffic jams immensely because of listening to the book. Otherwise, I will hate driving to the city center because of the jam. So again, I totally agree with you. At a younger age, let them enjoy the feeling of their connection to the books then. And as they go along, then again, multimedia certainly has evolved and can enhance further and stimulate their minds to grow then.
Oh, that's the day of the jackal, right?
Yes, the day of the jackal. And you are right, Nik, because when the book was written, there were some languages in French, and when the pronunciation read in French, oh, I think, you know, I honestly told you that I arrived the office and I stayed in the car park basement to make sure I complete the chapter. So that shows how is it. So we move on to the question by Che Azlila Hanita. Good morning. Is it possible for the child who has learned to read not through phonics, but by sheer exposure to print words and still be able to decode or decipher the phonics afterwards? So, so probably, Nik, your thoughts on whether is it sort of a prerequisite for them to have the phonics, or can they bypass phonics and straight away recognize printed words or alphabets then?
Okay, I would like to share the infographic that I have here. Can you see this? It's not clear.
Not clear enough. Okay.
Forward,
yeah,
just
just
forward a little bit.
Yeah, move it forward to
Oh,
you.
to you,
Closer to you.
Closer to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you can Google on this the Ladder of Reading, by Dr. I'm not so sure whether she's doctor, by Nancy Young. She's a reading specialist, and she studied about the reading, how children read, you know, and she found out that about 5% of kids can read without any formal teaching method, reading method. So about 5%, not much. So if your child is in that group of percentage, then oh, you're lucky, okay? And then because it's not clear, so I'm not going to show anymore, but you can look up in the internet. And 35% of children, okay, need to be taught some basic reading instruction. All right. And about 40 to 50% of children really need phonics, the real phonics, synthetic phonics, okay, systematic teaching instruction, and also explicit instruction. And another important point is multisensory, okay, reading instruction to become good readers, 40 to 50%, okay, and 5%, about 5 to 15% are dyslexic children or kids with specific reading disabilities, and they need the same kind of reading instruction, you know, systematic, structured, explicit, multisensory, but with more intensity, more repetition for those with reading disability. So for your child, probably if she can read without you teaching phonics, you know, if you are using a lot of language exposure with her, if you expose her to a lot of books, and she can like sort of learn by herself. So that will be the child in the first 5% percentile group. Okay, but other than that, reading need to be, especially for spelling, it has to be taught. It has to be taught. So you cannot assume that all children will know by themselves how to like connect this sound to spelling. You can't assume. And research has proven that you've got to teach them systematically and explicitly. Yeah. So, but maybe when they are when they are young, probably, you know, they can read easy books, and they we can say they are good readers. But when they are in the primary school and they are exposed to more difficult texts, then probably some can read, but they have problems spelling and writing. So I think that it's very good for all children to be taught syntactic phonics so that they are able also to spell and write expertly. That's my comment. Yeah, so it's not too late to teach them. At any age, actually, children can learn phonics at any age, especially those who have just illiterate people, even adults can be taught to read phonics, because we have experience teaching adults and also special needs kids, 16-year-olds, that people have given up on them, saying that they cannot be taught to read, but when they come to our class and we teach them in we could say in about 30 to 40 hours of FaceTime, they are able to blend sounds into words, and you can see how happy they are, how confident they are, and you just change their life, their whole life. And this is why I'm so passionate about teaching reading and sharing my experiences with everybody. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to retire.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I think the things that you have mentioned on Patricia Kuhl, neurogenetics of language and multilingualism resources, I've posted already in the chat, as well as Nancy Young on the ladder of reading, and also in the dyslexic references. I have also included for those who would like to pursue more. Then I think we are just closing in now, and we wanted to, before we make some announcement, so we would like to, give the opportunity for both panelists having their final words or any other announcement they have, references or sources that parents can follow up. I'm assuming there is already not many more questions left. And so we are towards the end now. I'm giving both panelists now, and we can go either one to give their last final thoughts, their takeaway messages and nuggets for parents to take away. And then if you have any resources that you would like them to refer to, you are certainly welcome. And before we end, we'll certainly provide you further announcement our next program. Yep. Go ahead, Jackie.
Parenthood or grandparenthood is always exhausting. Good parenthood, but the investment in teaching a child, giving them access to the books, reading to them, actually makes your burden much lighter, because once a child is a confident reader, they can dive into another world of books. There is so much joy when you see a child has learned things that doesn't come from you. When they are absorbing the knowledge of our entire planet. And this is what you are giving children when you give them reading and you give them books. You are giving them the entire heritage of humanity, and you are giving us all a future. It is the most powerful thing that you can give your children.
Okay, that's great. Any website or anything that you probably would like us to be aware, Jackie? Or references?
There is some material on my website, including on what I call the magic book, a book which a child will fall in love with, and so want another book and another book and another book. But for me, the best reference is to take a child to a bookshop or a library and to get them free range. Preferably one with a very good coffee shop or a tea shop, where you can sit and have a cup of coffee and they can have the access and choose the books, and show them also the non-fiction books, not just fiction books, but books about venomous spiders or tsunamis or brain tumors, and just say, whatever books you love. And often for very young children, you may even find they like adult books, from the non-section ones, particularly if they are on engineering or venomous spiders. Give them complete free range to find the books they love.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for giving us that wonderful feeling for especially young parents to connect their children with the wonders of books. Nik Eliani, your thoughts on how can we arouse and how can we just sort of encourage more parents in this journey of their child as a reader before they become a leader?
Yeah, whenever we have workshops with parents and teachers, my husband and I, we are partners in training parents and teachers how to teach children to read. We always tell them that literacy isn't a gift. It is the rights of every child. And who should be fulfilling this right if not the parents? It begins with the parents. So parents have to know that they have to do something to make sure that their children can read. Every child can read. And with that, they have to have knowledge, especially in this world now. And for the last 20, 30 years, there's so much research on how to teach reading. And we cannot, parents cannot leave it to teachers only, because now we know that reading is not something natural. So we parents, we have to support our children when they are learning to read, and even before they are learning. You know, we've got to make sure that we expose them to language-rich environment to get them ready. And then when they are learning to read, you support them at home with the help of the teachers who are teaching them to read in schools. And later on, you would just encourage, you know, have time to read to and with them, so that they will continue to grow, to love reading, and to become knowledgeable people. And that's what we want. We want today an expert reader, tomorrow an amazing reader, and that's what we want. Leader, sorry, an amazing leader tomorrow, not just any leaders, but we want amazing leaders now. Okay, no more lousy leaders, please. Okay, we want leaders that read a lot, and we want leaders that think, you know, for all of us, you know, in the country. So yeah, so parents, be ready to open up. Sometimes we have to unlearn what we have used to. We've used to teaching, reading the traditional way. Now, you know, we've got proofs, we've got research to say that there's a new way. So open up, you know, unlearn and relearn for the sake of our future generation. Thank you, Fakhri and Jamilah.
Thank you for that, Nik Eliani, and thank you for that, Jackie. I totally agree with you. I mean, to me, I feel like it has been such a wonderful session, very enlightening. We wanted to share with the parents and with our viewers out there why reading is important. And it doesn't have to be something that's painful for both children and parents. It could be really a fun journey, something that's so pleasurable. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about reading, it's how the children see themselves, whether they have the confidence to say, yes, I'm a good person, I'm somebody who can really do well and succeed in life. So please, parents, please remember this. Although we are just discussing about reading, it's not just about reading, it's about the children's future as well, and whether they will succeed in life or not. And with that, I pass it over to Fakhri.
Yeah, you know, Harry S. Truman, the US president, said that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. Yeah. And that's a big difference, because you talk about Fortune 500 reading books 4 to 5, but it's also said that in the history, all leaders throughout the history, they read at least a book every single day. That shows. I mean, I know Tun Mahathir, he also been reading books as part of the way and how they equip themselves to become a better decision making for the future. I also would like to thank both panelists for, I mean, we could see their passion in the subject, you know, encouraging especially parents out there, it's never too late. It's never too late to inculcate that this reading habit, so that then the children have a better tools in terms of getting through their life. And I'm sure we all want them to become successful, because to me, talents and leaders starts from home. We are the one who sets the incubation center to develop them, nurture them, their character, and having books as something to inspire them is a source of joy for each and every one of us. So with that, before we end, I just wanted to enlighten the listeners and the participants. So in case you need to share with us any of your thoughts, then just come over to our Facebook, the Jamilah or myself, or to the Cool Mom Super Dad, so that then you would be able to further connect. This month, the month of September, we focus on reading for children, young children, especially in the pandemic. There's no excuse for you not to say that you can't read for your children. Now that you have this new knowledge, and reach out to Nik Eliani if you have seen some of the children struggle, and I'm sure Jamilah has put in her Facebook and also Jackie's website. For next month, we are inviting Dr. Thomas Phelan. Now, Dr. Thomas Phelan is a clinical psychologist based in the United States, and we have managed to secure his time on this particular approach on disciplining the children, especially those who are 12 years and below. And this is something that has been, I mean, the reason how we managed to find out about this wonderful approach is because our son, who's based in Australia, having their two boys at the age of 8 and 4 years old, was having difficulty to discipline boys, as many of you would experience, just like us having 5 boys. But again, Dr. Thomas did this, and my son experimented and found that it has been very effective and useful, so that we decided to invite him to share with us on Wednesday, the 20th of October, almost the same hour, because they work on weekdays and not weekend. So similarly, people can sign in. It's already in the chat box, so that then this parenting talk, where one of the greatest challenge of any parents will encounter is, how do I discipline my child? And this is a great opportunity to find different ways, the alternative way known as the 1, 2, 3 magic. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very entertaining, enlightening, and enriching session for each and every one of us. I hope all of you have learned something different, got something from the panelists, and hopefully take the wisdom moving forward to enrich and for the betterment of the children. With that, thank you so much, everyone. And I will now close the session, so that then we hope to see you again in future. For that matter, thank you very much, Jackie and Nik.
Assalamualaikum, and see you next session.
See you the next session.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Our pleasure to be here. Waalaikumsalam.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stop recording.